Let's focus on that big farmers' march that took place in Mumbai today. It in fact entered Mumbai only over the weekend. The farmers beginning their march in Nashik. It was organized by a group of farmers affiliated to the CPM, and the protests grew day after day from a few thousand to thousands more, and then ultimately more than 50,000 of them gathering in Mumbai's Azad Maidan. Finally today, after meeting with Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis, the Chief Minister did agree to some of their demands, and talking to us about that now is my colleague Saurabh Gupta. So Saurabh, they've called off their agitation. What are the key demands that they had, and what did Mr. Fadnavis finally accept?
Well, perhaps one of the most key demands was the transfer of land, forest land that these tribals, Adivasis, have been tilling for years in their names. And that is something perhaps the government promised. And that's something that's very, very emotional for these farmers who were protesting, because remember, these are the landless farmers. They're at the bottom of the pyramid, very, very poor. Most of them were walking for this 180 kilometers with just basic, just a piece of cloth, a razai, and perhaps some chapatis, some dry pickle, and a bottle of water. That's all they were carrying. And for them, this means a lot, because land is the most important thing, and that the land transfer will be completed in a time-bound manner is something that they would be very happy with. Apart from that, there were several other things like the issue of MSP, which the government decided on and said that there would be separate committees set up for all these MSP issues, and that's something that farmers will be very happy about. Crop loan waiver also is something that the government made some promises on, but not complete as to what the farmers had asked for. And apart from that, several other promises were made, for example, pensions and ration cards and all of that, which is something that would have pleased them. But more important than the demands being met was perhaps what the farmers did during the march. And that is something that won hearts across the city. The Mumbaikars who were at the time of the march being announced were a little skeptical, because protests tend to go out of hand. Absolutely were bewildered with the kind of maturity, the kind of sensitivity that these farmers showed when they decided to march all night after marching an entire day in the scorching heat, simply because they did not want to inconvenience students who were appearing for their class 10 board exams today. And one of the things perhaps I would like to mention that touched me personally while covering these protests was what one farmer told me while covering the march. He said, "Look, I've never had access to education, but I would never ever become a problem for someone who's going for an exam, because I know what the value of education is."
Right, it's actually been pretty incredible there how peacefully everything happened, and the way that it all panned out. Saurabh, thanks very much for that update tonight, and let's take a look at what did happen today and some of the political reactions to this big story.
With bloodied feet, slippers as pillows on the bare road, in searing heat, surviving on handouts, tens of thousands of farmers walked 185 kilometers to Mumbai to meet their chief minister. But perhaps touchingly, walked the last 20 kilometers at night to avoid disturbing students taking their class 10th exams today.
आज आहेत परीक्षा 10वीच्या मुलांच्या, त्या परीक्षांना अडथळा येऊ नको, गाड्यांना अडथळा येऊ नको, कुठलाही अडथळा होऊ नको, कुठलाही म्हणजे काही अडचण येऊ नये म्हणून आम्ही इथपर्यंत पोहोचलो.
These are some of Maharashtra's poorest farmers. They want not just a loan waiver, but also higher pay for their produce and secure land rights promised under the 2006 Forest Rights Act.
जो वन जमीन है उसका पट्टा मिलना चाहिए. FRA कानून के तहत सरकार ने इसमें पहल लेकर यह आश्वासित किया है कि अगले 6 महीनों में ऐसे सारे दावे जो है उन दावों को हम लोग मंजूर करेंगे.
However, some of his key party colleagues literally saw red.
What has bothered me the most, these farmers who are holding communist flags. I hope it's not political, and I hope in future these political agendas should not, farmers should not be used for these political agendas.
महाराष्ट्र में जो किसान आंदोलन कर रहे हैं वो राजनीति से प्रेरित आंदोलन है. जिन लोगों को अपना अस्तित्व चुनौती में दिखाई दे रहा है, अस्तित्व खतरे में दिखाई दे रहा है, वो अपने अस्तित्व को बचाने की जुगत में इस तरह से लोगों को भ्रमित करने का काम कर रहे हैं.
However, Aditya Thackeray of a BJP ally, the Shiv Sena, tweeted, "I don't see the red flags, I saw the red blood, which is the same as ours. And it's unfortunate to be insensitive to those who feed us and put ideological cages on them." Rahul Gandhi tweeted the Congress's support and appealed to the Prime Minister and the Chief Minister to not stand on ego and to accept their just demands.
But let's hear it from the farmers. We spoke to a cross-section of them on what they think of the BJP leader's comments and what actually drove them and brought them here.
Sudhakar Sontake has been tilling 5 acres of land and has walked from Yavatmal with just a sheet, a water bottle and some dry chapatis and pickle in his bag. He told his family he will come back with a promise of land.
20-25 वर्ष झाले आमच्या ताब्यामध्ये जमीन आहे. वन खात्याने आम्हाला म्हणजे त्याच्यातून बाहेर हुसकण्याचे प्रयत्न करताय, आम्हाला देत नाही.
Shobha Ghatmale hopes she will be able to fund the education of her 2 girls if the land she tills is transferred to her name. On the way here, one day she walked surviving only on water as there was no food. Yet she breaks into a smile when you ask her why she is here.
हंसी क्यों है? हमको ये हक मिलेगा तो हमको हंसी आती है, तो मिलेगा हमको हिम्मत है.
Yuvraj Kumar is busy on his phone inquiring about his standing crop. A graduate, he'd rather not be farming, but he says he has no option.
क्या होता है, काम करते हैं ना, वो अंगूठा नहीं लगता, उसको रेशन नहीं मिलता. वो हमारे इसको जीआर निकला है, उसमें कई जगहों पे वो रेंज नहीं मिलती, तो वो भी रेशन नहीं मिलता हमारे पास.
Over the last few years, there have been several farmers' protests across the country, and many of them have even turned violent, like the one in Mandsaur in Madhya Pradesh. But this one perhaps stood out for the manner in which it was conducted and the fact that it drew Mumbaikars from all across the city to come out in support and help them in whatever way Mumbaikars could. In Mumbai, with Imtiaz Samnani and Sohit Mishra, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
Joining us on the program tonight from Mumbai this evening, we have Mr. Prithviraj Chavan, the former Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Yogendra Yadav, the President of Swaraj India. Joining us this evening from Patna, here in the studio with us, Subhashini Ali of the CPM, Ejaz Ilmi of the BJP, Mr. Deshratan Nigam of the RSS, and Gurcharan Das also joining us via Skype as we get into this issue of farm loan waivers in some detail. Mr. Chavan, to you first. You know, in a sense, some would say all's well that ends well. I think we should be grateful that this was a peaceful protest. It didn't turn violent. There was a certain dignity in the way that it was conducted by the farmers there. Are you convinced with Chief Minister Fadnavis's promises, though, to them? Do you think he's going to be able to keep them if he hasn't been able to keep them till now?
No, I don't think Chief Minister has even met 25% of the demands. Let us, of course, first of all, you must compliment the farmers for a tremendous peaceful march. Another thing to remember, that these farmers were for only 2 districts, district of Thane and Nasik. Many of them were Adivasis. One main demand was the Adivasi land rights. Now, you know, the land rights law was enacted in 2006. The fact that this government has been completely lackadaisical about giving land rights has been highlighted in the march, and that demand has been conceded by the Chief Minister that within 6 months they will hand over the pattas to the Adivasis. But the main agriculture crisis, there has been a grave agricultural crisis in Maharashtra over the last 3-4 years. There have been 2 years of drought, and the 3rd year when there was good rains, there was demonetization, and there were again farmers suffered hugely. And that is why the demand for a complete farm loan waiver was made. And another thing I'd like to highlight, that every single demand that the farmers from the entire state of Maharashtra have been making are not new demands. Every single demand is a promise which BJP had made before the elections. Number 1, complete loan waiver was promised by BJP. Number 2, implementation of Swaminathan Commission recommendations was a promise personally by Shri Narendra Modi before the elections. Third thing, the Chief Minister promised a MSP law, that any trader not giving minimum support price will be prosecuted and punished All these promises have not been fulfilled. Even today, on the Swaminathan committee recommendations, the ball was thrown back to the center. That was the main demand.
But Mr. Chavan, if I could ask you, because all the points that you raise, all the points that you raise are very, very valid points. However, on a couple of things. One, on the issue of having this the land rights transferred to the farmers. May I ask what you did when you were Chief Minister on that issue? And B, the Swaminathan Commission's recommendations came in 2004, 2005, 2006. So what were governments doing with Mr. Swaminathan's recommendations since then?
No, they please examine the record of the NCP Congress government in Maharashtra. The law was enacted in 2006. I was in Delhi at that time and I had a small role to play in enacting this Farmers Land Right Act. But when I came to Maharashtra, I think our record or implementing the farm rights, handover of lands to tribals was outstanding. This government after 2014 has completely neglected the Adivasi issues. Of course they had to, because that's a national law. They had to accept what the national law is. And now the Chief Minister has woken up and said that within 6 months he'll try to clear all the appeals and all the cases. So that's a good thing. Yes, I hope it does it in 6 months. But what about the farmers' main demands?
Okay, Mr. Chavan, stay with us.
The farm load waiver. The Chief Minister gave a package of 34,000.
All right. I take what you're saying, and I just want to take this to Yogendra Yadav first. Yogendra Yadav, do you agree with Mr. Chavan here that it's not even 25% of the farmers' demands that are met, or are you a little more hopeful that they've walked away with something more substantial?
Nidhi, I'm very positive about what happened today, not because I expect the promises to be kept, not because I expect the agreement to be a great agreement, but primarily for two reasons. One, because of sheer mobilization of Adivasi farmers. So the Adivasi farmers issue have seen light of the day, and to my mind, it is probably for the first time this country has looked more closely at the Adivasi farmers and their issues. Second, the manner in which Mumbaikars responded and these very organized agitators came, this to me opens the door for a new kind of farmers politics, which is not confrontationist, which is not anti-city. These are two very big positives for me. As for the actual agreement, I have not seen the text, but I remain somewhat skeptic. The reason is all over the country, the experience of farmers is that they first have to agitate to get their demand registered. Second time they have to agitate to force the government to concede it. And third time they have to agitate to force the government to actually do what it has earlier promised to do. So this agitation will go on and we obviously cannot expect any one clear solution. There were three major demands, two of which are general all India farmers demands. One is a loan waiver. The second is minimum support price. I don't know if the government has done very much on that. I would like to look at the text. I don't know if the government can do very much about minimum support price, because even as we speak today, chana is beginning to come to Maharashtra mandis and it is selling for at least 800 rupees lower than the minimum support price of the government. So I'd like to see what they are doing. The third issue was very specifically the issue of Adivasi farmers, that of forest land and rights. And there, let's hope that these 6 months do make a difference. I do hope some steps may be taken, and that can be one net gain from that. But I look at more long-term gains rather than net gains. To Mr. Prithviraj Chauhan, I would just say two things. I respect the way he looks at these issues, but may I remind him that there was a similar march done by Ekta Parishad from Gwalior to almost the doors of Delhi, that Jairam Ramesh went and negotiated with them, and even at that time led by Ekta Parishad Rajgopal, these were at least 25,000-30,000 farmers. What happened after that, sir? To my mind, nothing came out of that whole thing, and this is what Mr. P.V. Rajgopal himself thinks. So let's not think this is the first time.
So maybe we can be hopeful that some lesson, as you say, has been learned from this.
I would be curious to know why these issues were pending till 2014 of the land right.
Absolutely, absolutely. But Ejaz Ilmi, you know, one of the unfortunate things that happened today was, you know, BJP leaders like Poonam Mahajan, who's a member of parliament, you know, she used the term urban Maoists to describe them on one television channel, these farmers. At the end of the day, Devendra Fadnavis has given into some demands of these very so-called urban Maoists. I mean, that's a contradiction in itself. Is that a rather unfortunate use of terminology?
Mr. Devendra Fadnavis, the Chief Minister of the BJP-led government in Maharashtra, has done a very sensible and a positive thing in showing that he is pro-farmer, he's sensitive enough, he understands that the issues, procedural issues, real issues, cross-linking of river issues, tribal rights, forest rights, MSP, on all these things, he has said, I will come clean and be with you and stand with all the farmers who are protesting, especially. Secondly, on the forest side, there are certain districts in Maharashtra.
You're not answering my question. Yes. On Poonam Mahajan.
Well,
and the BJP that had spent the whole day dismissing these as left-sponsored protests. Was that fair?
This protest was by Indian citizens asking for their just rights. That's my statement to you. If anybody feels to the contrary, he can have his own say, but this is my statement to you. And I am glad Mr. Fadnavis has reached out and reacted in the same manner and reached out and decided that this is something that needs to be addressed because they're procedural issues. Why Nasik, Thane, Palghar? Because look at the comparison of the other districts like Gadishori and others. Their compliance is 60%, but in these districts, the transfer of tribal rights and the pattas that were given to tilling was 5%, 6%, 7%. So it's also you need to put good officers there to implement a good law, which obviously is not being done. So he's asked for 6 months because he can make sure the entire system is revamped and these kind of complaints do not come again.
But Mr. Nigam, if it hasn't worked before, why should we think that it should work now? And ultimately, did Mr. Fadnavis have to give in because it just became politically very uncomfortable to do anything else? I mean, first you call them Maoists all day and then you say, okay, we're going to listen to your demands.
See, I don't agree calling these farmers as urban Maoists. Certainly such kind of a language should be avoided. Secondly, Mr. Yadav saying that first time they have the Adivasis have got organized. It's not true. We have a RSS as a Vanvasi Kalyan Ashram. We call them Vanvasi rather than Adivasi. And they are doing huge work in the field with the farmers, getting into group farming. So issue of small land holding is one of the biggest problems which brings down their income and does not give them remunerative farming. So the Vanvasi Kalyana Ashram is also organizing them and working in this regard so that their remunerative income increases. And see, scratching the surface is not the solution. Loan waiver may be just temporary. And you need to look at the larger picture. As you rightly pointed out, the issue is not Maharashtra specific only.
No, it's not. It goes way beyond Maharashtra.
Therefore, the Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Orissa, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana. So you have Madhya Pradesh as well. So therefore, you need to look at the larger picture. The biggest problem out here is to how to increase the income of the farmers. Agri industries is one of the biggest solutions that has to be brought to the village so that their products can be converted into agri-based products. Second is, it's difficult to consolidate holdings. So therefore, group farming, get people together so that their lands are pooled in and you do farming. Cooperative farming is another issue, and reliable irrigation.
These are all important points, but you know, some of them have already been addressed in MS Swaminathan's report, right? So what has stopped governments from looking at those recommendations more seriously?
I would like to say that what we are seeing today and the kind of crisis that farmers are finding themselves in, it's not something that has happened today. There is a background and there is a context. And I would like to say that actually the whole neoliberal paradigm as it was designed has got an inbuilt anti-farmer angle to it. Because what are the aspects? One is reduction of subsidies. Now many of these subsidies are crucial for agriculture, like fertilizer prices, like diesel, and the increase in diesel and petrol prices, the increase in electricity as a result of all this, and the increase in seed prices after the complete privatization of seeds. All this has meant that the input prices of the farmers has gone up exponentially. And on the other hand, there are many restrictions on governments actually giving farmers fair prices. One is governments don't want to give it, and also there are restrictions on them giving it. So the farmers have been caught in this bind. Why are they demanding loan waivers? Because they're not getting proper prices, they're just not able to make ends meet. and that's why they're caught in the debt trap, especially when it comes to cash crops. So it's a very big problem which has got a lot to do with policies. And I think that what's happening now is that more and more these kind of agitations are not going to go away. These struggles are not going away. There are going to be more struggles which are going to be attacking the very policies that are responsible for what farmers see as their plight. 2,500 farmer suicides in Maharashtra last year. What is the analysis? Why is this happening? And the fact that this particular struggle, though it was restricted to maybe 3 districts or 4 districts, but the numbers that came and who were the people who came? Not only people who owned small plots of land and were wanting loan waiver and proper prices, but even agricultural laborers. Some of them said, if the farmers are not able to make ends meet, then how will we get our wages? And this problem of the Adivasis, I'm sorry, but there's a lot of wrong things that are being said. In fact, after the Forest Rights Act was passed and the whole process of applying for pattas and lease to the land that they've been cultivating started, you will see that there are 1 or 2 states that have performed very well. Tripura was actually one of the states that in the context of the proportion of the population. Have not. But other places, in fact, government started resorting to evictions. This has happened in UP, this has happened in Maharashtra, this has happened in MP to a huge degree, that Adivasis and forest dwellers were deliberately evicted.
Let me just...
So now this victory that the Adivasis have won today, this is going to have huge repercussions. I think people will agree in all the other states where there are tribals who are demanding pattas.
As long as the promises are kept. And I say that. I just want to come to this, this point about the loan waivers, because it's a debate that keeps coming up, and Gurcharan Das is with us. Gurcharan Das, data actually shows
the whole huge corporates their loans,
that is what I'm saying.
And they are running away from the country with these huge loans.
Is it fair to criticize
the poor farmers?
Is it fair to criticize loan waivers for farmers?
Very wrong.
When big corporates seem to be getting away with it all the time.
Well, 2 wrongs don't make a right.
The fact is,
that's not the point. That's not the point.
Loan waivers are just as bad because they punish people who are honest and they reward people who are dishonest.
The farmers are not dishonest. So, this is unacceptable.
Look, she's been talking for a long time.
Let him make statements like this.
He has an opinion. We can contest it later.
This is totally wrong.
You can't call farmers dishonest.
Point here is...
I highly take objection to Mr. Gurcharan Singh.
Sorry.
Okay, Gurcharan Das, go ahead. Please finish your point. Clearly, you will have a lot of opinions to contend with.
There's a moral hazard in loan waivers. What you do is that people who pay back their loans, they are in fact punished, and those who don't pay back their loans are rewarded. And that is something morally wrong. Don't compare to the other sectors, just stay with this. The real issue in agriculture, as economists have pointed out, is one is certainly the farmers have absolute right for getting proper pattas, proper land
inherently, yes.
Rights should be given. But at the same time, what is important is to improve productivity. And to improve productivity, you need to take, you need to bring in technology. You need to allow the farmer to lease his land. You need to have
all of that is true, Mr. Das. But the point is, how can we justify? How can we get up and say it's a moral hazard to give loan waivers to farmers when you have big fat cats in the corporate world who are getting it, who are getting away with it, who have caused huge NPAs?
I mean,
our banking system is collapsing because of that.
No, but sometimes it's an economic necessity to save them from the brink of disaster. Loan waivers have been done by governments, and it has to be done.
But I'm asking Gurcharan Das that whether this is a very sort of elitist outrage that pops up when it is farmers that we're talking about, and then you see what the Nirav Modis of the world have done.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is 2 wrongs don't make a right.
Can I just
the fact is you have got crooks like Nirav Modi and you don't compare them to farmers. Look at the morality of the issue. that if somebody takes a loan, that person has a right, has the duty. It's something we learn as children, that when you make a promise from our mothers taught
well,
us,
I wish we could say, I wish governments would say that exactly to those who are fleecing public sector banks. Subhashini Ali, then Prithviraj Chavan, yes.
No, not just the banks.
Come in for a minute?
The point is that when you have not been paying them the reasonable prices for their crops, which you have also promised.
One moment, sir.
When you are not, when the government is not procuring at the prices that it is promising, and you are saying we are going to punish you if you don't repay the loans.
Mr. Chavan first, then Yogendra Yadav, and then back here.
Can I just come in for a second?
1 minute, Mr. Das. Mr. Chavan had a point to make. Mr. Chavan.
No, Nidhi, I strongly object to the statement of Mr. Gurcharan Das where he calls farmers who have taken loans as dishonest farmers. You see, when you waive off loans to big industries, you call it stimulus package. You give lots of write-offs, 2,10,000 crore worth of write-off to banks to write off the big industry loans. But when it comes to farmers, are farmers dishonest? These are 2 straight years of a drought. Are farmers responsible for a drought? Then after good rains, you have demonetization. Is it farmers' fault? Now, farmers have not been able to pay back loans because of these conditions. And that's why it's a special case. A loan waiver has been asked and has been given by Maharashtra government. What we are objecting to is Fadnavis government announced a loan waiver package of 34,000 crores and hasn't even given 13,000. He is now reneging on it, putting conditions and all. That is what you are objecting to.
But you know, I have one counterpoint to make on that, sir. I want to ask.
Considered.
No, I just want to ask Yogendra Yadav about this because we had a conversation about this last week as well on this whole moral argument about loan waivers. Mr. Yadav, when you look at the data, and it's very, very disturbing data on farmer suicides, it actually shows you that even after loan waivers have been announced, it's not something that has led to a decline in farmer suicides either. So therefore, this seems to only be a stopgap solution clearly, if at all. And I mean, you had a massive 50,000 crore plus loan waiver that the UPA government announced, but you've still seen farmer suicides actually go up. If you look at the national numbers, they've actually dramatically shot up after between 2014 and 2015 alone. The gap is about 3,000. So, you know, is it just a band-aid solution?
I think Mr. Gurcharan Das's argument needs a more serious response because the starting point has to be loans ought to be returned. That should be the starting moral premise. And merely saying that there is hypocrisy is not enough of an answer. He can clearly say, look, 2 wrongs don't make it right. As long as people like him are equally vocal and equally outraged when all other loans are waived off. I don't quite remember that, but my memory could be doing tricks. As long as he's very equally outraged when this recapitalization of banks takes place, which is another way of loan waiver, I would say he'd completely justified in saying, you know, I'm against farm loan waivers. But please remember, in moral reasoning, 3 arguments have always been considered valid exceptions to the norm. Number 1, the person simply cannot pay. For the last thousands of years, this has been the final argument, but the PAN cannot pay. Number 2, the reason why he or she cannot pay is beyond him. He is not responsible. And number 3, that someone else is responsible for what's happening to him. In the case of Indian farmers today, all the 3 hold valid. Number 1, most Indian farmers are simply in no position to pay. You have to kill them, you have to destroy their property to do so. Number 2, the reasons are beyond them, and we are now realizing climate change could be one of those additional reasons. The reasons have to do with various things which are clearly beyond farmers' own effort and energy. And number 3, the biggest reason is state policy, which has artificially kept the prices depressed. In this case, sir, Mr. Gurcharan Das would agree with me as a moral philosopher, there is a decent case.
I just want to though come back to Mr. Chavan, and that's very well articulated by Yogendra Yadav, and then I'll come back here. Mr. Chavan, if you look at various states, and let's not just talk about Maharashtra, Karnataka has similar problems, Punjab has similar problems, UP, and we were just talking about that. This isn't something that's only about Maharashtra. These states too have announced loan waivers. It hasn't worked. Farmer suicides have still happened. Farmers were dumping potatoes and tomatoes in Punjab only in September last year. So this is a much bigger problem that needs to be looked at on that scale.
There's one serious problem in the national policy making. The BJP government has a clear bias against the producers and in favor of the consumers. The government wants to keep the inflation rate low, and the best way to keep the inflation rate low is to keep the farm prices low. That's a very important position. But Maharashtra, why I would like to come back to Maharashtra? Maharashtra has got only 18% irrigation. Compare it to Punjab with about 95-96% land is irrigated. The Maharashtra, if rains fail, what can the farmer do? 2 continuous rain failures, 2 continuous years of drought, and 3rd year we had good rains but there was demonetization. Is it farmers' fault? I think the main demands, that's why, is implementation of the Swaminathan Committee recommendations on minimum support price. And also some law like the Madhya Pradesh Bhavantar Bhugtan law, which the central government is thinking about and has given to Niti Aayog to find some solution. There is no clear-cut way forward on that. And this is what the farmers are required. And also, secondly, a robust crop insurance system. If there is a natural calamity, what can the farmer do? You provide these 2 things,
I just keep wondering why none of this,
and a robust crop insurance.
Why it's taken so long to implement any of this. I keep saying this, that the Swaminathan Commission report came in, the last one was I think 2006. I mean, it's been so long. Let me just come to the last comments by everyone. And Mr. Nigam, is this ultimately going to be the issue that defines the next general election? Is it actually going to be about farmers, rural distress, and how the government deals with that?
I don't think so, first thing.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. And secondly, why, as you're saying, that loan waivers are taking place and the suicides are rising? Because they have not gone behind the reasons of suicide completely. I have a study before me which says failure of crops, family problems, chronic illness, marriage of daughters, responsible. There are 100 reasons given. And the person, the study of the the NGOs studies, the government studies, which are there available on public domain. Debt burden is 2.65% of the overall suicides. You've got to go deep inside to study this complex problem. Therefore, I'm saying loan waivers are okay. Part of it is there, but to say the loan waivers, still the suicides are increasing and loan waivers are taking place. So therefore, there are certain other reasons that have to be gone and looked into.
I'm going to take those reports from you and have a look at those. Ajaz.
Well,
will it be the issue that defines 2019?
There'll be a lot of issues, absolutely. What Prithviraj says about Mr. Chauhan says that this government has an inherent bias. I think Mr. Fadnavis has clearly, by reaching out and stepping it up and saying in 6 months' time I'm going to resolve these issues, whether it's state issues, procedural issues, forest right issues, patta issues, the people that...
I wish him the very best of
absolutely
luck. Absolutely.
We are very clear. And we also must, I mean, one good thing that Prithviraj Chauhan talk about is the Bhavantar scheme in Madhya Pradesh.
Yeah,
Mr. Shivraj Singh Chauhan realized that it's a very important issue, and the subsidy gap that was given for procurement of by government agencies is something that should be replicated on a larger platform. Yeah, absolutely.
Politically, Suhasini Ali, is this, do you think, going to be a central issue? The BJP doesn't think so.
It is going to be a very, very important issue, and I think the way these movements are developing, because these are very different from other movements that are taking place. If you saw this movement, it was a very united movement. This is very important. It was not a divisive movement. There was no caste division, there was no community division, none of those things were being appealed to. So this
what would you say to those who dismissed it as a left protest?
Well, it was a left protest. I'm proud of it. Of course, it was a left protest. It was organized by the Kisan Sabha, and why should we be shy about it? It's true. And, everybody else is welcome to organize protests too. Rajasthan has also seen huge protests, and you'll see more of them. But about the loan issue, when you said it doesn't lead to a reduction in suicide, it's true. That is because what is the loaning that is going on also? If you see the percentage of the loans going to farmers from the nationalized banks at slightly lower interest rates and that going to the corporate sector, the gap is widening all the time. So the farmer is also being pushed to borrow money at very high interest rates from the Mahajans, from the money lenders. You just saw what happened in Balia yesterday, where a woman was burnt to death because of that. So this is also a huge demand that farmers are making, that why are we not, today you can get a loan if you want to buy a car or a scooter from a bank very easily, but if you're a farmer, there are hundreds of formalities that you have to go through, so you are pushed to the Mahajan. And the governments, except for once the state government of Kerala, LF government, they went after the loans from the private Mahajans also, and they said we are going to take care of those also. So it's a very complex issue, and to say it doesn't work is actually being very unfair to the farmers who are getting it from every which side. Reduction in subsidies,
fair point.
Increase in input prices.
It's a complex issue.
It is a
much more
complex
complex issue than...
Since Devendra Fadnavis says he can do this in 6 months, let's all come back here in 6 months and hold him up to that promise and see what he's able to fulfill, because I suspect if he's not able to, I suspect that you're going to see, you will see another agitation, and that could be much, much worse politically. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us on that important issue.